to order.
Sounds good.
First item on the agenda is normally the approval of the prior meeting's minutes. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes from the previous meeting, April 20th?
Where are they? Thank you.
If we've had the opportunity to review that, and do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Stollard. Do I have a second?
Second. Leonard,
Second by
Sandra.
Saunders. Thank you very much. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, we have presentation and discussion of the Monroe County Recycling Center tour. Karen, are you going to do that, or is Pete?
A little bit of both, I think. Let me, I had to share a different thing here. I just went ahead and I'm going to pull up the file I sent you all. Hopefully everybody got it. I know a few bounced back for being too big, but I tried to send as many photos as I could for everyone. There's no captions, so if you were able to scroll through, this is the time when we can share a little bit more about what we saw, those of us that were there. So I'm happy to share some of that.
Are they going to be posted somewhere that we could look at, like on the website or anything?
I did not post them on the website. I could.
Because I never was able to get the email. It was too large.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, let's look at them.
We'll go through them right here, and I can put them as a link on our website, so
Yeah,
I can
you don't
see.
have to do it now. I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
So, well, this was the very beginning on the outside of what they call their recycling center, public drop-off area. And there we go. And then when you turn around from there, you see their little parking area and some of the stations. This is a look down the way. There's
Is this a recycled strip mall like it looks?
it kind of looks like that, yes.
Clever.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
I did like this bulletin board just because, you know, wanted packing peanuts. I just thought it was a neat way to share, you know, like that you maybe you're gonna give something, or that you have something you want, even an American flag disposal box, which was interesting. The paper was being sorted by staff inside. There was a smaller scrap metal bin. We later ended up in the very back where it gets moved to the larger container. I think, yeah, I thought this was another neat one, moving boxes for reuse. So, you know, if you have them, you put them in. If you need them, you take them out. Cardboard to recycle, all their plastics. It's a little bit, you know, I just tried to take pictures of signage and things so we could refer to it later. Newspaper, some of their signs, like we mentioned in the last meeting, you might want to redo them sometimes over time, but metal cans, mixed glass. So this was kind of in the long line across that parking lot from the building. And then when I was over there, I took a picture. This was the, like Sarah Lynn said, strip mall of the, which included a hazardous material drop-off area, as well as, what did they call it? Materials for the arts. So kind of amazing, apparently woman has been working there for over 20 years and has a reuse program, and you can kind of go shopping for stuff. And she, this, I loved this picture of Greg and Sandra. We were all
Amazement.
mesmerized in there because she obviously over the years has been a part of some craft shows and, you know, different programs where she has displayed a lot. So it was a pretty neat area. There, I had more pictures of that, but
Did they sell it or give it away?
give it away. Yeah, you just you could come in for 20 minutes and shop for what you need, or you can donate. He said some people don't even, like, the stuff never makes it to her. She just connects people. So, I mean, it was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It reminded me of a museum gift shop. And then I just included a sign of all the rules and everything. Household battery recycling drop off. And this was the front of the hazardous materials area. Here's Pete and his happy place.
Oh my goodness.
So this was a shelf.
Thanks, Pete.
This is again another reuse. So they will monitor the materials that are still usable and place them on this shelf that can be taken by residents. So I didn't include the picture of the sign-in sheet for that, but I took a picture of it because it was pretty detailed. So if you're doing that, there was some documentation there. Battery sorting, another area of the storage for the hazardous materials. And then when you
Litter boxes get a lot of reuse.
Right.
yes, they do. People are always looking for those. In the back, just to kind of show they still had other kinds of dumpsters where things were stored and some storage kind of containers too. And then this was the education room, which is kind of amazing too. So we didn't really stay in there for too long, but it was a nice place to chat before we started the tour. And those are, I had about 50 pictures total, but I just kind of pared it down a little bit for you all. But I could link the full slideshow onto the website. So then I'll send the link so you all know where to see it if you want to see all the details.
Who takes classes in there? Is it for staff or does the general public come for classes? How does that work?
There's an educator. We did get her card and we pulled all kinds of flyers just so we could see what she offers. But yes, they will have students come through there. It is a shared building for their, I believe, the extension office. So they may do some other programming in there for that. But yes, they do offer some programs at the site. And he said they do, like, kids can come to the class and also tour the area just like we did. So pretty neat. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing that. And then Pete, if you had anything else, any follow-up info from, what was his name, Tom?
Yeah, Tom, in some of the stuff that I heard a question, and then he sent me a little bit of information. I didn't glean a whole lot out of it, but as far as what he sent me, but just a few things. The area there fit for about 100,000 households, give or take, when the university is in session, as far as the people. So as a comparison to us, we've got, triple that size. They actually have a budget that is 2.7 million. As a comparison with us, we're about 1.25 million. They operate 5 drop-off sites. Some of those are for waste only, and other ones are for waste and recycling. So you do have some of that. Some of it is convenience centers that are not necessarily all the time monitored. So you have that. Most of this site was the one that collected most of the different things and was their main site. I think a couple of the things that I was really impressed with that really kind of stood out to me is the citizen drop-off area was actually fairly small in footprint, but they set it up in a way with compactors that I think would be very beneficial in managing space. That any facility that we would obviously benefit from those types of situations where we did have compactors as things came in. The has-been site, Karen mentioned, was my site. It took up a lot of space, but it also took electronics, which we have separately. We have our has-been at another location, and the electronics are up here at the WRC. So, they had pretty much everything in that site, which I felt like it was a one-stop shop, which I really liked. They had a household hazardous materials reuse to where they put the stuff on the shelf and people can come in and get that. That would save us a lot of money if we had that ability to do, because people bring it in, we have to dispose or get it recycled, which is costly. When a lot of it is good material and can go back out. Obviously, you have to have it in its original container and all its labels have to be on there. But I thought that was pretty impressive and something that I really wanted to do for a long time. They did a throughput from some of the statistics that he gave me was 2,283 tons of just your common recyclables and annually. And when I went to look at what we did, we do about 3,500 tons. So we are doing more, but proportionally to the amount of people in the county, we're not doing nearly as well as what they are.
It's hard to compete with a smaller town.
Yeah, it's a little bit difficult. Their county has, and some you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but they have curbside recycling for their residential areas. They do not necessarily offer it for their businesses, unless that business works with them and they will recycle as much of it as they can, source separated. The city or that district will send somebody out there to pick it up. And they will really work with them on an individual basis and helping them get a recycling program going, picking up the material and bringing it. Now, there are costs associated with that program, which I think everybody felt was pretty reasonable for what they were offering. There were also fees for other things. Some of the electronics required a fee. Some of the hazardous materials might have required a fee. But they're getting some income based upon those fees that we don't really take at the moment. So if we was to create a site like this, maybe that is something that we would consider in a way that would help cover cost. And in the future, I think that might be a good idea. Would we love to have a facility like this? Yes. State-of-the-art facility would be very nice. It could double as education to bring people, to educate them, working with all of our different partners to give presentations or to donate material that can be part of that. I think it could be set up really nice. So that was really my take on everything. I think it was well run, and they did a lot of different materials, and they did it in a relatively small footprint. So I think it was really, really good tour.
I'm waiting for you to add the number of staff they had.
Yes, they had 27 staff members. We have 8 or so, 10, maybe. Would be nice to have a few more staff members. A little help might help.
Yeah.
What if you counted the contractors that say it has been? What's it take us to? None?
That would just be one more.
Yeah.
We're doing 90% of the work at the has been.
What, Sandra?
Contractors too. They had
They did.
contractors also. Yeah, it was a very well-run facility.
Yes.
And who was it run by? The local government?
It was their solid waste management district.
Yeah.
Couple things that I would like to add. I intentionally didn't do the walkabout, number one, because I would slowed everybody down in the drizzle, but I've seen it before. I think their utilization of the small footprint they had was just remarkable with everything they have in place. The community is a very progressive, recycle-friendly community, as exampled by the Household Hazardous Waste Reuse Center. People know household hazardous waste is exempt, but in Bloomington, people will take it to this facility and let someone else use what's remaining of it, as long as it's properly labeled. That's one of my favorite takeaways from it. But just the transparency that is there with Mr. McGlasson. As you know, the other 4 sites are not nearly as nice and compact as that, but they do utilize roll-off services and fenced, graveled, or paved areas that they lease on long-term leases, so that we don't have to worry about shifting sites if, I know we got the one taken care of, but, if the fire department says they need their space now, we have to find a new home. They've been pretty stable in their facilities ever since the landfill closed. But just the professionalism in which they meet and take care of people, the way the cars moved through the facility, even though it was a rainy day, there was still a decent amount of traffic flow through that one main facility. So I guess my one request would be, can we send a letter of appreciation from the City 109 Board and the Advisory Committee to Mr. McGlasson? I know you've thanked him personally, as have I, but just on behalf of all of us, send something in writing. I would greatly appreciate that, because I thought he was very welcoming.
Excellent idea. Yes.
Yep.
I'd like to do that.
Curtis?
Yes, we can do that.
One idea that we might consider putting a link onto our website is there's a Facebook group called New Louisville Freegans, Freegans. And I get rid of stuff readily and give away, I occasionally ask for things. And this is an example of how esoteric. A couple of weeks ago, I wanted an Audubon clock, the kind that sing the bird for each hour, and a coat rack for the new LCAN office. And within a day, somebody offered me both. The coat rack had never even been taken out of the box and put together. So, we might consider that, as if the moderators would agree to it. They may say, no, I got my hands full, but it's a nice service.
If we would just, and I liked what they was doing, and Karen did mention that they do share. A lot of material doesn't even make it to their reuse thing. We would love, and I think, to have a reuse coordinator that is their job, is to find and move material. And like I said, a lot of it doesn't have to be like physically, we never touch it. It's just making contacts.
Yeah.
So I would love to have a reuse coordinator. Whether we get a facility like this or not, I think it would be a good idea for us to have a reuse coordinator.
I had a thought on that. Is there any way we could possibly tie with somebody like Habitat for Humanity? We used to do the paint thing, but it was so complicated. They would have to fill all the paints and mix them and stuff. But would they be interested in having like a room where people could bring stuff like that back and forth? Is that a possibility?
the latex paint recycling program through Habitat was actually done through us.
Yeah, so we had some
got the-
connections to it.
Yeah, we
Right.
got the grant for it, and they really wasn't too interested at the end of it.
I know. Because think of all that work of having to do that transferring and stuff like that and mixing. But what if it was more like this facility where people just brought stuff in and took stuff out in the label? I don't know. Just a thought.
They don't have the space. They really don't have the space. If there's a space for it, that would be all great. But
Okay.
we would, maybe we can do something like that if we was to build a facility like this. But it gets to be a little bit more difficult when depending upon the size.
Okay.
That can be pretty big, particularly if you're talking about larger construction equipment or boards and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just throw in, everything everybody said was true. It was a great tour, a great facility. Thank you, Bruce, and anybody else that was involved with getting us there. And my other thing is, it changed my mind completely. The first one we pulled up, and there was the strip mall type thing of cars having to pull in. I thought, my God, this will never work. Because everything else has been where the cars just circle around and move around from different places. But after watching the people do it, that made it more workable, I think, in a smaller space. So I'm now sold on that type of concept. Rather than having people drive around to different things, it seemed like they pull in and just do the stuff. If they had to, they could pull out and go to another spot, but it just seemed like it worked great. So, yeah.
Well, and to Bruce's point, if it's been that way for a long time and the public's gotten used to it,
Right. Well,
it
that's
goes
true
a
too.
long way to smooth operations,
Right. Right. But it just seemed a well-run, compact place. Yeah.
That facility has been fairly the same for the last 15 years. And I hate to say it, but they're probably 15 years ahead of us with regard to education of the community.
Yeah.
So it has to make us question, where do we invest our resources?
Right. It's a different
and
community.
Want to move forward.
Speaking of which, I stopped at the Hubbard's Lane Recycling Center 2 weeks ago. Come June of this year, it will have been there for 50 years, 50. That's pretty amazing.
Not without some significant upgrades that it needed. It
True.
looks pretty good right now compared to what it was 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other questions about the Monroe County facility? Well, Pete, if you could, and Karen, if you could coordinate between the two of you, letter of thanks on behalf of the city, the 109 board. I know Bob was there. And those of you who attended, I truly appreciate you taking time out of your day to go put eyes on someone else's efforts, to get a comparison of what we have accomplished better, what we can improve upon. So thank you very much.
That was the one question I wanted to ask. Did anybody there say, hey, you guys, if you try to do this, here's what we would do differently? Did they give you any tips like that?
I would
think
say
that question was asked.
Yeah. I think it didn't come up because they're pretty happy.
Too blown away.
The one
The
thing
other
about
thing was
Tom-
they talked about how things had changed over time, partially because of what was in the stream. So in a way, they addressed it, but not as a direct result of that kind of a question.
Mm-hmm.
Point.
For
Yes,
example,
yeah.
we got to watch them sorting batteries. And part of that has come about because batteries are very different than they were 10 or 15 years ago.
What about, did they say they were having, I'm guessing not, but it would be interesting to know, are they having any problems with biodegradable plastic bottles getting in the way of regular?
I don't think it came up.
I don't think they're out there enough to be a problem yet, but I thought I'd ask.
I think that's an emerging issue.
It didn't
Yeah,
come up.
somebody hired me 15 years ago to research it and I couldn't find any info. It was so novel back then.
I do feel that Mr. McGlasson would be open to any questions that may come out of committee or advisory committee meetings or subcommittee meetings. He's a very gracious host, and he's been at that facility for 15 years
Cool.
plus, probably. So thanks to all of you who did attend, and for any of you that couldn't, wish you were there, but it was a wonderful tour, I thought.
Well, I appreciate the photos in the report because it feels like I was largely there.
Good. With no other comments on the Monroe County facility, the next item on the agenda is new business, and it's the first discussion of the 5-year solid waste management plan. I know that this has been made a priority by the 109 board for the advisory committee to focus a lot of their energies on the 5-year plan with staff, I guess, with staff's assistance or direction, we can go through the topic items, but I did want to make sure that we clarified the subcommittee meetings will continue on. But the advisory committee itself, its primary focus is going to be on the 5-year plan, correct, Pete?
Yes, sir. Bruce, if I could, I would like to go through a little bit of the training materials sent out by the state on 5-year solid waste management plans, just really briefly. And then I have already put a link to this training material in the chat. So if anybody wants to pull that up, they can. Is that okay, Bruce?
Oh, absolutely, Pete. Thank you.
Mhm. Okay, so basic elements of a solid waste management plan is an overview of the solid waste management area, which I'll talk about in a second. So it's an evaluation of the current solid waste practices, an assessment for improving programs and policies, and an outline of specific actions to implement programs for the next 5 years. Hang on a second, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can blow this up a little bit. Okay, so 5-year solid waste management plans came into effect back in the early 1990s as a result of federal legislation sent to the states, and then the states enacted. Ours was Senate Bill 2, and it required that every county designate a solid waste management, be in a solid waste management area or district. Louisville Jefferson County at that time was designated a solid waste management district through ordinance. It required us to develop a comprehensive waste management plan, update that plan every 5 years. It required us to provide a universal collection services to all residents, that we assured our disposal capacity, that we set goals to reduce waste, increase recycling, clean up dumps, and control litter, determine how siting for solid waste management facilities would be done, and authorize capacity for landfills. And it required us to involve the public in our decision-making process. And here is the laws that govern 5-year solid waste management plans. We do have a form that we need to use. That's the DE form 6062, which I think you guys got a copy of it. They do offer preparation assistance, and this is a plan that has to be sent to the state by October 1st, which I thought it was November 1st, but it's October 1st. And the state, once they get that, they approve it within 120 days or disapprove it and send it back to us for deficiencies. If we don't get it done, they'll give us 3 notices, and then in the end, what they can do is they can do it themselves, or they can withhold any funds to this county for that has anything to do with the solid waste management funding. So they could do that. We ain't going to get there, but that is something that that's the law. If we make major changes to our plan, we always have to amend it, and we can open that up at any time. This is kind of the timeline, and we've talked about this with the board already. We have already completed this because it's in ordinance. We've been in the process of reviewing and evaluating, and we're kind of sitting in here in this April where we're starting to identify objectives. We're maybe just slightly behind our schedule, but we're not that far. We need to get to a public notice and comment period by August, late August. So that means we have to publicize it in the paper for 30 days. And we have to offer up a hearing for comments for the public to come and give their input. September, you have to hold the meeting, and you have to adopt this plan through a resolution of the waste district or from the government. Typically over the past 25, 30 years, it's always been approved by the Solid Waste Management District Board through ordinance. That is one of the express duties of the Waste Management District as given to us through Metro government. And we get it completed by October 1st. Current practices of all these things: collection, disposal needs, capacity, recycling reduction, eliminating open dumps, controlling litter, citing facilities, enforcing ordinance, and overseeing budgets. We have to include all the different ordinances that impacts that, interlocal agreements, host agreements, and so on. In the budget, we stick with the Solid Waste Management District budget for this. So that is basic part of this. You can obviously get into a lot more detail as this goes through. And like I said, please take a minute to save that link so that you can start to review this training material. And if you have questions or anything like that, that I can shoot to the state representative, Deborah DeLong, who is our representative, for any questions that you may have if I can't answer them. This is their public notice and 30-day comment process. Gave us a flow chart on everything that we need to be able to do. So all of this is in there. Gets into, well, just quite a bit. Even goes into examples of the different chapters and stuff. So with that said, we took this to the 109 board at the last meeting. Give me a second. To discuss, as Bruce said, the process here. And this is really the kind of the planning process that the board they didn't vote on it, but this is what they ask us to do. The staff has drafts the descriptions, the strengths and weaknesses section for each chapter for 109 board approval. The advisory committee is part of this process. Drafts potential action plans. Staff drafts potential action plans and implementation schedule for each chapter, which we intend to do, obviously, with advisory committee input. Then we would have a retreat. And at this retreat, we would give the board members, we would go through everything. We would discuss the possibilities, the draft action plans. We could discuss them in detail, decide which way that we want to go, and the board will give us the direction on some of the things that we should be able to do. At that point, we'll have a final draft, we hope, or close thereto, before we go out to our 30-day public notice with our draft plan, and then ending with our public hearing. So that is kind of the process. And while it seems like we have a lot of time, We do not. We can't spend a lot of time. We need to be all business with this. So that is where we're at. And if anybody has any questions about the process, please let me know right now so we can make sure that we're all on the same page.
Did I hear you say that we are supposed to set goals?
Yes, the final part of every chapter, after you do the first part, that what we've sent out was our first draft of the current conditions. The next part is identifying all the strengths and weaknesses from those individual chapters and current conditions. After that, you draft a plan and an implementation action plan and an implementation schedule that you need to try to stick to.
Is there a requirement that we go back and look at what we said 5 years ago to see how we fared?
They do suggest that in the training material that that's one of the first places that you would want to start. I can tell you that there wasn't a whole lot in the last 5-year solid waste management plan because we had just completed the 10-year study and we was not at a point where we really adequately looked at that, and we didn't want to get too far ahead of ourselves.
Thank you.
Pete, did you say that the link to that training material has been sent out, or can it be sent out to every advisory committee member?
It is in the chat of this meeting. So if you look on the lower right-hand side in the chat, you should be able to click on that link to open it up. And once you do that, if you just want to save it to your computer for later reference, I can also follow that up with a direct link in email form.
That would be great if you could, please.
Yes, no problems. So just to go and look at the document real quick. This is basic stuff about the solid waste management area. Who the board is, how it's operated, whether it's a fiscal court, 109 board, a taxing or a non-taxing. We're non-taxing. Who's the members of the advisory committee will be on here, who's the solid waste coordinator. And then it just requires us to have attachments. The collection system. So this is our first cut at existing conditions of the collection system. It asks us to describe the hauler registration process. And that's a process that's required by law that we have. So it is really already in ordinance and how we do that. This is the strengths of the collection system. This is the weaknesses of the collection system. That's our next step. Then we have the collection system implementation schedule, specific actions, whether it's how we do it, frequency, when we start, when we end. And then it moves on to disposal. In the disposal, we have to look at the different disposal facilities. Let's see. Let me just continue on. This also includes things like how we handle disasters as far as debris management plans, which I can tell you that we've been in the process of updating ours. And, we're in the midst of doing disaster debris process right now due to the tornado out in Glen Mary, J-Town area. Operating drop-off sites and stuff like that. So that's something that we are doing currently. Recycling and litter reduction. It gets into yard waste and what we're doing with yard waste. It gets to describing how we handle motor oil, batteries, antifreeze, how we handle household hazardous waste. Electronics, down to how we help the school system to recycle paper, office paper. Then we get into the litter issues and so on, and enforcement, facility citing. So it's a lot. And I don't necessarily expect that this committee would be involved in every one of these chapters. Like the citing would probably be more directed with planning and design. Enforcement is something that we do along with codes and regulations. Obviously, you'll see it and we would want your input on it, but it's probably not your focus. Let's see. I don't think that this board would really be interested in the lien process for enforcement, or the code enforcement board and stuff like that. Most of that is written into ordinance anyway. So that is really the background of this 5-year solid waste management plan. We have to use this form. The form is not easy to use. It's made to fit every one of the 120 counties. Jefferson County is unlike any of the 120 counties. So there's ways that we can kind of work with it. There's times that they'll unlock editing for us. But the form is what the form is. And
did you say we've used it in the past?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry. Did you say we've used this in the past 5 years ago or not?
Yes, we've had a plan, and this form changes about every 5 years.
I know we've had the plan, but this form is what I'm asking.
Yeah, it's essentially been the same form
that
we've used for the whole time. There's small changes each and every time. For an example, they used to have a chapter on education. They have taken that chapter out, and you're supposed to include it for each of the chapters that you have, which I think was a smart move. Any questions about the process of 5-year solid waste management plans, the form, anything I can answer?
I'm not jealous.
Expectations of this committee.
Yeah.
Will you develop a roadmap as to the topics that the committee needs to focus on, and those topics where we have boilerplate from years past that we can actually utilize in certain sections?
We can do that. And Karen and I have kind of talked a little bit about that already as far as how we can break this thing out into manageable bite sizes. We're going to try to focus on the collection system, on the recycling system with this group as much as possible, and some into the disposal system. I think the disposal system is pretty set in the way that process has to work. We have to do a calculation to find out how much waste that we feel like we're going to generate for the next 5, 10, and 20 years, and ensure that we have guarantees that we have a place for our waste. So it's pretty much set process. So that's what we would do, Bruce. If that's the direction you guys want to go, we can kind of focus on those 3 chapters there, and keep you guys generally keep sending out all of our revisions, try to get people caught up on the way that this process is going. But as we talked about, we don't have a whole lot of time. So staff is going to be trying to work through this as fast as we can and keep feeding you guys to get your input.
So if I'm counting correctly, we have May, June, July, August, and to get the plan virtually complete, and then have a 30-day notice for a public hearing. Is that correct? In
That's
September?
correct.
So we have 4 meetings prior to advertising for public notice. So we're going to have to dedicate virtually our times here at the advisory committee to just focus on the roadmap, as we've discussed here over the last few minutes, and give our input and basically put our nose to the grindstone to get a product ready to submit for public hearing. Any other questions from any committee members? Hearing none, I believe we understand our challenge. I also would say that I would hope that everyone on the committee would be just as interested in the per se boilerplate areas that staff is going to complete, because I would hope that everyone would have the desire to be knowledgeable about the entire plan upon public hearing as possible. So, anything else you want to add, Pete?
No, sir. I think that pretty much covers the process. Did everybody receive a copy of what we have done so far? I think it went out with the meeting invite, didn't it, Karen? So what you'll see right now is what we've already begun work on. And we have come a long way, and I would hope that we're fairly close on most of the current systems. Obviously, we got editing to do. There is a lot to cover. So if people could look at what we currently have, if you've already done it and you want to give input right now, we'll take it.
Are
If
you
not,
talking to Sandra and me?
well, we're going to have to let Karen have a run at it first, because we would be here all night if we had to do that.
Hey, Bruce, this is Bob
Absolutely
Lee.
true.
Can you hear me? Bruce, this is Bob Lee. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, Bruce, I'm a little bit concerned. I'm hearing the way that we are getting the input from Metro government and Pete's, and appreciate all the work that he's done. But I'm not quite understanding, do we need to strategize in regards to how we as a group, how you, excuse me, as an advisory group gets the information back to Pete? I mean, should it come through you as the chairman of the advisory board, or do you anticipate individually people with thoughts and ideas send their own ideas to Pete in order for him to look at?
It would be my, I guess, expectations personally that anything we send to the 109 board would be voted upon and passed by the advisory committee. It's going to be each and every action that we submit, we should have, a majority in favor of before it goes to the 109 board. Does that answer your question, Bob?
Well, yeah, and I'm just trying to, so you would be the focal point. In other words, all of the ideas and changes that people think that they need to have or anything would actually come to the advisory board and then go to the 109 board, as opposed to individually sending them to Pete so that they could get to the 109 board. Is that kind of where we're at?
I think that's the best way to keep everyone engaged and informed.
I think that sounds impractical, because if two of us send similar ideas, it would be nice if staff had already synthesized them into one for the group to review.
Well, if I could, Bruce, Bob, and Sarah Lynn, I think our vision here is, number one, making sure that we get it right, that it's vetted by everybody and voted on by everybody, whatever the outcome is. We're also tasked with speed. And sometimes if people send an idea to me for an inclusion, I can have that ready for presentation to the advisory committee for their consideration. It's not as though I would take the idea, directly put it into this plan and take it to the 109 board. That is not my intent. We have to have, it's in our best interest that everybody has had a chance to have their say in this. This is an important point in the training material. We have to have public buy-in. including you guys.
With that said, I really don't have an issue with them taking ideas to you as long as you inform and we as a committee vote on those concepts for inclusion in the 5-year plan prior to going to the 109 board as a recommendation. Would that be agreeable to everyone on the committee?
I think it's the law. I mean, this can't get approved without a public hearing. Even if we weren't on this committee, we get a chance to have a crack at it before it's finalized.
I agree.
Bruce, I would hope that instead of it coming to you and the next step would be a vote in regards to either accepting the proposal or not, I would anticipate some discussion on each individual situation so that there would be many stakeholders involved in order to determine just what's best instead of just simply the idea coming to the committee and then the committee voting directly on that particular issue.
Well, I think you're one step ahead of me, Pete, or Bob, because what I was hoping to request from Karen or Pete was a roadmap of the topics that we, as an advisory committee, need to focus on. I guess what is outside the typical boilerplate, and all of those concepts, whether they're called into Pete or whether they're brought up in committee meetings, all of those, I guess, majority ruled actions, once voted upon, would be presented to the 109 board. And it would be one step at a time through the roadmap. So is it possible, Pete and Karen, that you guys can put together a roadmap for us to follow? Because we need to put hard deadlines on each topic item.
I think so, Bruce. I think I'd like to have a little bit more detailed conversation with you on your expectations for that. In the concept, I think is good. We can do that.
Any others comments on that, Bob? Does that help with the direction that you were going?
Yeah, it does. And I'll just wait until you and Pete get together and determine what the best way to go. I just hope that there's discussion upon each opinion and each different issue that you all address instead of just a vote, a straight up and down vote is all I'm saying.
Well,
When
I
do we
think
ever
you've been
take a
around our
straight up
committee
and
long
down
enough to
vote
know.
without discussion?
Yeah, we discuss way too damn much, and this is going to be pretty candid discussion. And under a time crunch, we're going to have to discuss and act, and all be reasonable about the issues. But I agree with you that each and every item, we need to be aware of, we need to support, and you as a 109 board member should expect no less than that coming from us.
Bruce, if I could add one thing, to make this process work, in consideration of what Bob is saying about discussion, I think that one of the things that I would really request of each individual committee member is to do their homework before the meetings and come ready to discuss. It could be that we get to a meeting and there's something there that everybody agrees upon. We don't even have to discuss it if everybody has agreed upon it. But if it's something that we know is going to be an issue, we can be better prepared if everybody understands what is written before the meeting.
Very good point, Pete.
I would definitely agree with that statement.
Pete and Bruce, could we use the subcommittee meeting time for kind of reviews of these items so that we have additional time before the full advisory committee meetings? I'm just looking for time. Say again.
I think that's a good thought because I would hate to have to basically double up on our monthly meetings as a entire advisory committee to get this done. And if we need to utilize subcommittee time to accomplish this goal, so be it. Then they can report back to the full committee, and it may shorten the amount of time necessary to come to agreement on certain topics.
I was just thinking those subcommittee times could include the whole committee, you know, anybody that's available to come, right? Based on how Pete structures, you know, the prioritization of what the advisory committee would focus on. That'd give us at least 2 additional hours per month, you know, collectively as a group to at least kick those things around before the full advisory committee meeting. Just a thought.
Oh, I think it's
Well,
excellent.
we already kind of do that because certain other subcommittees meetings, and a lot of you do that too. So I think that's a good idea.
I would agree with both of you.
I agree.
Just with the understanding that nothing is going to get voted on until the full committee is in session.
Exactly.
Right.
Any other comments? Good, we have our work cut out for us. I think we're up to the task. So Pete, if we can work on that roadmap, Pete and Karen, our topics, and that'll give us a good place to start at the next subcommittee or advisory committee meeting.
My first ask
Yes,
to the members is that you take the time to read the document that we've already sent out. I think it's pretty close as far as the current conditions. And I know it's not the most exciting reading, but it is pretty factual. And, you know, while I'm sure that there's typos, Sarah Lynn and Sandra, try to look past
Right.
those so that we can keep going. You can tell us about them, but you know, we got the intent of what we're trying to say here.
Fair enough.
It's
Pete,
a
I've
large
read that.
document. Is there something we could concentrate on, you know, as a,
I would
as an
right
advisor?
now, my first request would be that you focus on the collection system. And the second would be the recycling and reduction system. Those are the first two that I think people really could focus on early on into this.
Do you know what pages they are roughly?
It's the
23 pages
collection
long.
system starts on page 2.
Page 2?
Page 2.
Okay.
They get right into the meat of it.
Wow.
The recycling system starts on the very bottom of page 8. And obviously, as we add to things, they're going to slide down, and, you know, that's just the way they go.
That's just, thank you. That's a hint. Right?
Pete, I've had a chance to read those twice and I thought they were very well done. There's a lot of information in there already.
It's a huge amount of information in there
Yeah.
with a lot more to go. You know, when we talk about the recycling and reduction, I think we've captured a lot of what takes place. But I think where we are missing just a little bit is at the end of that is the education. We've got an extensive education program that really needs to be put in here to show exactly what we do. I think it's really important. And I think that would include the Recycle Right program the tagging program. People need to know that.
Yep.
any other comments? All right, Pete, I believe we're up for the task. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
And next item on the agenda, activity reports. And residential construction demolition subcommittee. And we have an overview.
And we do, and it's a great segue from what Pete was just saying, because we worked again on the capture rate studies, RFP, and I'm excited. I think that the information that we get from back from the study when it's done is going to help us be more effective in what we're doing. We're not finished yet, but we've certainly come a long way from where we first started. Do you want to give them any specifics, Pete?
Karen, would this be better answered by you?
Well, I know I received more from the recycling partnership that I did not receive before our residential C&D meeting. So unfortunately, I haven't had a whole lot of time to look at it yet. But the good news is he definitely is here to help. And, you know, the recycling partnership helps do those. And so whether we utilize their services or we just kind of use their information as a template, I think we'll be on our way. But yeah, we basically asked for some guidance on an RFP, and we'll keep looking at that to be ready for our next meeting.
Actually, the general information is not so much what's bogging us down. It's the specifics of what we're looking for from whoever gets the contract. And rather than try and invent some of the work ourselves, we were interested in looking at some other ones. So I'm excited to see that you've gotten something. I think we feel, to me, like in terms of the total set of concepts we need to have, we're at least 3/4 of the way through, and we've done the big ones, and we're down into some of the smaller details.
Good.
That's our report, Bruce.
Thank you very much. It sounds good. Sounds like we're making good progress.
Sandra, we have the C&D part in there as well, correct? I'm losing track of my committees. But it is the residential C&D committee. I just wanted to give a quick update on the asphalt shingle process and to asphalt. We met a long time ago with Bluegrass Testing Labs, and they had mentioned that they were going to work on some, I guess, some draft specifications that could be used in bids, and they have completed that. And very shortly, I'm trying to set up a meeting between the Kentucky Asphalt Association and Louisville Metro Government's engineering department that lets out a lot of these contracts to get their first look at it and input. Again, just trying to make this to where we can get asphalt shingle recycling back off of the ground. It's a lot of material and would certainly help our diversion rate, but we're there, and they've also talked about some potential trying to find some way to incentivize people to utilize this contract. So we're in that process, trying to get it at least going with Metro Government. And I think if we can get that process started there, it's a lot of material, and it would also help us prove the concept for a lot of the home rule cities, or even people that are letting contracts out for parking lots or whatever. So I just wanted to give that update. I think it's important. We haven't been able to focus on it, but I am still working on that.
Now, does this relate back to the concept of looking instead of at percentages and things like that when we're putting in formulas at the state level, that we'd be looking at outcomes,
I think
not how something is going to get used?
Yes, I think it's performance based. And the whole thing was there was a percentage that you can put that into the specifications. But really what it comes down to is to leave these asphalt companies a little bit more flexibility in how they make their special mix. It would come down to performance. And that is really the key. And that would, because it's a performance standard, that would prevent someone from putting too much in there because they think it's a way for them to save money, and actually causing brittle asphalt that has to be replaced sooner. So I think that they're going down the right path with this.
Is there a need for testing to show what works or that it works?
Bluegrass testing labs, that's basically what they do. They have a way that every mix that they do, it goes through a weatherization. They simulate all of that so that they can be sure that what they're putting down is good material.
Okay. Then my suggestion isn't necessary.
Okay, any other comments?
One more thing. Sorry. I think we received word today that the city Metro will be again applying for the rubberized asphalt grant from the state. And that is to use tires in the asphalt mix with the, we've done it several times. We believe we just need to prove, and it takes time, that those roadways last longer, that they're quieter than what we're currently using. It might be more expensive, but if you get 20% more wear in the long run, we may be coming out further ahead, and we're using, rubber from tires. Again, we're finding another use for that material.
I thought CEMEX was using all the tires we generated.
They're not using them all. And what I would tell you is CEMEX sometimes goes down. And when that happens, we've got so many tires, huge pile up, and it causes enforcement problems for us. That's how we ended up with a site down on Mix Avenue with probably close to 80 to 100,000 tires.
Oh, boy.
Anything else, Pete?
No, sir. I promise that was it.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to Greg's meeting from about an hour ago.
Yeah. Okay. We had a very good meeting, I think. I think we all did. And we did decide not to make a change, so we will continue to meet the hour before this meeting, for better or worse. Karen presented a multifamily toolkit, I believe, slideshow. That was what it was called. That I think was excellent, and it was well received. And I asked her to share that with this advisory committee at some point. I'm not sure how we'll do that. I'll let you talk about that in a second. But I think it was really good. And Bruce offered us a tour in addition to the tour we had at Monroe County, which we'll talk about at this meeting, I guess, He offered a tour of the, I think, Center City in Cincinnati with the new robotic sorting facilities, which we're going to hear about that from staff too, I think. We're looking forward to that. And then that the staff will share that with, no one came from the multifamily or apartment association. The stakeholders weren't there. They've been very good in the past with tenants, but they weren't there. So we're going to share the toolkit with them. That's about it. I think somebody wants to add.
Thank you, Greg. Karen, did you want to go through the toolkit?
I can, if you'd like.
Yeah, I don't know
Yes.
if at this meeting
I
or
can
just
email it.
Yeah.
I'm happy
If
to
you could
email the slides.
I
I
think
think
that makes more sense.
yes,
Okay.
if you could email the slides out, that would be wonderful.
Yep.
yeah, it's short but sweet.
I did want to add something. I always got to jump in. One of the things that we've been meeting with the apartment association, and the reason that we kind of slowed down a little bit on it is because we really feel like that those people need to go through a tour of an actual recycling facility so that they can understand
Right.
what recycling really is. I think everybody feels like that they got an idea of what the recycling facility looks like and how that material is processed, but you really have no concept until you actually see it. I think a lot of people have this vision that you've got all these people sorting through this big pile of stuff into these things, and it's just not what it is. But we really need them to see that before we really get into the nuts and bolts about how we're going to attack this and work with them.
Right. Very, very good. Yes.
That's scheduled. Sorry, for the apartment association people, we have that scheduled for May 19th, and I'll work with JD on having a follow-up meeting soon after that we can present that toolkit.
Pete, I'm going to check with Hillary to see if we have any video available of the artificial intelligence and the robotics used in the material recovery facility, because I know it's quite a commitment for people to drive to Cincinnati to view that. But I was very disheartened earlier today when the question came up from someone on, I guess, an acquaintance of someone on the subcommittee, is the material really recycled? People really don't have a concept of the investments made by multiple companies with regard to the recycling efforts that we're trying to accomplish.
And Bruce, I don't think it's because they think we're doing a bad job. It's just there's always stupid stuff floating around at a national level saying that it goes into the landfill. And they just trust that I'm going to tell them the truth. I mean, the note came in, "Dear Miss Reduce, Recycle, or something like that. You know, it's just, I think it's a thing we're going to have to tamp down all the time. And I vouch for the industry here, but I just think people are going to keep asking because the rumors keep going around.
I would agree, Sarah Lynn. And again, when we compare, the 15-year education campaign that they've done in Monroe County to what we're doing here, you can see the buy-in in Monroe County versus where we hope to be quicker than 15 years here in Jefferson County.
I also wonder what's the average education level in that college town compared to here, and if that's a factor. I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Can't answer that.
We do.
Yeah.
Actually,
We
I
do
got
have-
the feeling it's a factor, but not always in a positive way. Is that fair, Karen?
Say more.
Transient population,
Y'all are freezing.
in your ways of doing things, you're getting a new group to do that with every year. They're a freshman every year. The other part of it is they bring with them all their biases and prejudices and knowledge came before, which may not be relevant to where they are now.
Good point.
I got the feeling overall it was a bonus, but not the best bonus in the world.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. Thank you.
If I could add one more comment to the topic, we have our RFP for education marketing firm. It's not went out yet. We've had to work some on the legal stuff with our purchasing department. But that is one of the items that we had discussed, is educating people that it is not going to the landfill. So put waste in its place and all of the things that come with it. I think we all, through the last couple of years, I think we've come to really understand that there's certain common issues that we can address through this education campaign. And I can't wait to get started with it, but it is a problem. And I think that that's one of the ways that we're going to have to tackle this issue.
This book is written by a linguist, and he talks about the importance of not saying things like it doesn't go to the landfill, because every time you say it, they think about it going to the landfill. So if you want to borrow it, it's skinny, but I think you got to watch it,
I think that's right up
just
Karen's.
to tell them where it goes. Just tell them where it goes, but don't tell them where it doesn't go.
Yep,
I think that's true with litter education as well. You don't talk about litter, you talk about beautification.
Yeah.
I was going to mention the same thing, Pete, about the RFP and how that's in there. And I did get an email today inviting me. I'm invited to the bonfire platform. So that made me feel like at least it's getting out there soon, hopefully.
Yep.
Bruce, I was going to mention about 8 or 10 years ago, we had 10 or 12 mayors that toured the facility at the same time. And they all of a sudden became a spokesperson for how effectively the recycling process worked. So, when you get these leaders in these cities that are talking to their residents, it's really helpful that they've seen it. So that was one of the things I recall that was more meaningful to me than anything else, was all of a sudden you had 12 advocates who handled, 8, 10, 12,000 residents. And they were saying, hey, I saw that. It's really cool. You need to go see it. So I'm a big proponent of education is what I'm saying. If we can get them there, one picture is worth 1,000 words. So
Agreed.
Goes right back to the old adage, seeing is believing. So that's good. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
How common is it that juveniles are not allowed in these facilities? It's probably pretty pro forma, right?
I would have to check with Ann Powers at our Cincinnati facility. I know we do a lot of school education campaigns, but in Cincinnati, they probably, we have a huge classroom and a big windowed viewing area that is somewhat protective of the children if they would go into the facility. I know we did an extensive tour, and Pete was there, Bob was there, Bob Schindler was there. There's certain areas where, it's a little more dangerous, if you will, that we wouldn't want children. And I'm
The
saying
idea that I'm thinking of is that somebody made this really creative curriculum using amusement parks. And there are, high school physics classes that go out to Kentucky Kingdom, because the Ferris wheel and the roller coaster, there's all these physics principles that kids are into, and it's just a really sticky way for them to learn. And I dare say the Murphs have a whole lot of those same physics going on. And it would be really interesting if you could have, say, a group of high school AP physics students come and then get some media coverage of how these students are learning about these different principles at the recycling center. That people would get a kick out of that, and then others would see it, and maybe it would get some extra credibility or confidence,
Well, I think that goes along lines with what I was hoping to find. We have information or tape with regard to the artificial intelligence and the robotics. That's right up the young generation's alley
Yep.
when it comes to processes.
In
So,
fact, Central High School has a robotics specialty, and they just got a bunch of coverage because they use that NASA robot dog for lessons. If you were to have that class up there to your AI facility and the media covered it, that could go a long way too, because it's a magnet school and those kids come from neighborhoods all over.
good.
I
We'll
would,
check with Ann next week or probably tomorrow.
I would add, there's some older people that might not need to go through those facilities as well. They have large magnets. And if you have a pacemaker, it's not a place for you.
I thought you were kidding.
Yeah.
No,
It's-
it's clearly marked that there were
Wow.
areas that Pete could not go to.
Huh. Well, Pete,
Yeah, West Rock actually, I think, put it on some of their material that you can't, if you have this, don't go through.
dang.
Okay.
Can you get an MRI?
Maybe after my next replacement,
Yeah.
they have new ones.
I think Pete understands what an eddy current does, so he didn't need to go there anyhow.
Yeah, one more part of it.
I think the optical scanners would be really cool for people to see, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, it's simple physics is really the way that those things sort
Right.
material. And I think it's an awesome idea if we could use some physics classes to go through there and to get the publicity, because
Right.
they're using it educationally, but we're also using it public education wise to let
Right.
people know that it is getting recycled. I see a plan developing.
So I even can think of how to proceed, actually. So if you want to have an offline, we can.
Well, if there's any questions with regard to what we have to offer, please don't hesitate to forward those to me. I had
Thank
a
you.
conversation earlier today with the director of recycling, so I can run it by Jeff, and certainly we can hopefully come up with some tape. Maybe it's already in hand, maybe it can be developed quickly. But that's something I'll definitely get with Hillary on tomorrow.
Thank you.
Anything else on the subcommittees? Pete, there's an item on the agenda here with regard to the 109 board.
I'm ill prepared for speaking to that.
The report, you basically mentioned it when you talked about the 5-year plan.
Yeah, I think we covered it.
Okay. Any public input from anyone wishing to be heard on items pertaining to tonight's meeting? Hearing none, we can move on to announcements. The next 109 board meeting is Wednesday, April 27th, my wife's birthday, from 5:30 to 7. I may call upon someone else to give an advisory committee report on that day, and how everyone can understand why. Our next residential / C&D subcommittee meeting is May 10th from 2 to 3. Is that correct? And our next ICI / self-haul meeting is Wednesday, May 18th from 3:15 to 4:15. Our next advisory committee meeting is Wednesday, May 18th from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Any questions regarding the schedule? Hearing none, is there any other items from any committee members or anyone on the meeting wishing to be heard?
Friday's Earth Day.
Thank you, Sarah Lynn.
Drop off on the 30th.
Cool.
Get rid of your unwanted stuff before Derby.
Except paper.
I'll be document shredding at that particular event. If you have anybody that you can share that with, that would be helpful.
Where is it? I mean, do you have it
It's
on
at-
Facebook, you mean?
Yeah, there's a event and schedule is on the website, but we had an issue with our shredding company, so we won't have document shredding on April 30th, but the event is at the Metro Fleet Services parking lot on Newburgh Road.
Thank you, Karen. Anything else?
Pete, you can use that photo of you from the Monroe County Has-Been Room as your Christmas card this year.
I didn't think I could feel any worse about myself than I did, but there you go.
It's a great
We
picture.
love you, Pete.
I think Sandra and I may use that picture for ours.
That was a nice photo.
I'd like to write the
What they
caption.
don't realize is that the whole ceiling in there, we were
Yeah.
amazed.
It-
It wasn't that one ball.
Uh,
It was everything.
yeah, it was an eye
All
opener.
the slides. I have several photos of that. When I post it, I'll send the link so you can see.
All right, well, I thank each and every one of you for your attendance this evening. I thought it was a very good meeting. We're about 4 minutes ending early, which is great. I wish all of you a very enjoyable and safe evening and week and month. Just watch out for the other guy.
Thanks for
That's the ones we have to
supervising
worry
us,
about.
Bruce.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Thank you. Have
Bye.
a good evening.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good night.
Do we
Bye-bye.
need to adjourn?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Yep, we're going to need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Sarandek and a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Pat.
They voted with
Had
their
to do it
feet, some
legally.
of them.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.